My question is, do you really feel, thanks for coming, do you really feel that there's an atmosphere where the state can be a leader with regards to working across the aisle and getting some things actually accomplished, whether it be in the health? I mean, you can identify the top 3 issues. It seems like the economy, it seems like the health issues, it seems like, you know, I don't know if the redistricting is finally done. But are we in a position now where leadership and people, it's almost like a throwback to the 50s and the 60s and 70s, where there were statesmen who were really willing to step forward and play the role of doing what's right as opposed to thinking about what's elected? Yeah. Is there a change going on here?
I would actually say that Colorado, if you look at our history, really actually has a pretty good record of working across the aisle. While part of the problem, when I've gone to a lot of editorial boards lately with my new role, I've been yelling at them because I've been saying, all you report on is when we're yelling at each other. You never report on the stuff that passes 65 out of the House, the 65 members, 65-0. Because even though if it's a significant bill, so let me give you a couple examples. Last year, the budget, which did get coverage, passed with, out of 100 legislators, 80 legislators voting for it. A really big bipartisan group, and the votes against it were bipartisan too. I mean, it wasn't all the Republicans, it was Democrats and Republicans voting against it for some reasons, but the vast majority supporting it. And very rare did a state have that many. I don't know any other state that had that many legislators voting for it. And during this entire economic downturn, we haven't ever gone to special session to deal with the budget. We actually do pretty well on that. Last year, again, another bill, unemployment insurance. Given the recession, and this was hardly ever reported in anything, given the recession, our unemployment fund had gone negative. We borrowed money from the feds. This had made press, but we need to solve this problem because long-term, actually, we had some structural problems that the fee schedule on unemployment wasn't working. And it wasn't working before the economic downturn because it was done, decades ago and no one's updated it for changes. Well, Democrats and Republicans and business community and labor sat down and said, what can we do to get this to work? And the bill ended up, I think, passing almost 100-0. It's one of the most significant things long-term for dealing with our unemployment insurance. Never got reported on because we worked together and no one was yelling. I think on jobs in the economy, I think there are going to be some things we can agree on. There's going to be some things we fight on. On health care, there are some practical things that are I wouldn't say that are incremental steps that I think we can work on. Big in healthcare, I think it's tough because the Republicans are very much, tomorrow in the House floor, we will be debating a resolution to call for a constitutional convention, not a state constitutional convention, a United States constitutional convention, to repeal the national health care reform. First of all, we've never in our history had a constitutional convention, except for when we started the country. And we're going to call a constitutional convention to repeal through the Constitution a statute. So I think there are some fundamental differences. I think there are...
Is that one going to pass?
It will pass the House. The Republicans will vote for it. It will pass the House. But it will not... It's a resolution. It has no weight of law. As most people say, it's a letter to Santa Claus. That's about as much meaning. Actually, probably a letter to Santa Claus has more meaning than this resolution will. But I think there's a lot of interest in working together. I think we will actually get a lot done together, but there will be the big fights. I mean, if you look at our bill last year, civil unions, it actually passed the Senate with every Democrat and 20% of the Republicans. It died in the House because it was a party line vote in committee. Hopefully this year that won't happen. But I do think Colorado is unique, that we actually do, even with term limits, even with limited staff, we tend to actually work pretty well together.
I think we have a couple of hot button issues on which we're on opposite sides of the aisle. I think you'll see anything to do with immigration going red and blue. I don't think we'll get anywhere with ASSET this year at all, which is the one who would allow tuition equity for students. We'll probably, hopefully get it out of the Senate again, but I don't know. I mean, there are people in tight races. Are they going to be advised not to vote for it? I don't know what will happen with that. And then also, I think healthcare is a red and blue issue. The chair of the JVC, Representative Giroux, has a big red and white target on Medicaid. She thinks Medicaid is the worst thing since sliced bread. No, kidding, that's right. I'm teasing. But you know, just their attitude about Medicaid is that it's this huge suck. And what's interesting is if you look at the report that Medicaid presented to the JBC, they had this one slide, and I pointed it out every chance I get, that shows what's happened to healthcare costs nationally and in the private insurance industry in the past year. They're all going up about 15, 16%. Medicaid has gone up less than 1% in our state. And so it's done a tremendous job at controlling healthcare costs. And as I remind her, it's not that people don't want to buy health insurance, but who's got an extra $15,000 sitting around? So again, there are just these issues where they won't go there at all. I think you'll probably see some stuff around voter ID, around E-Verify. Again, we'll be on opposite sides of the aisles. But otherwise, I agree. I think there are a lot of things that we can agree upon, and you just won't hear about them because they don't get the press.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Sturman, Representative Tarantino, for being here. I'm a resident, and so are some three people that I just brought here to Hirschville Towers. Interesting you bring up the governor wanting to address the issues across the state. During his term as mayor, he led a campaign that was very racist, of broken windows, going to neighborhoods of racial profile that led to profiling due to his loose leash for police officers and excluding the wealthy neighborhoods. How can we assure, or I'm sorry, how can you assure that the governor will be inclusive to the poor people and the issues that are concerned at large? And particularly, and you also mentioned that he was a brewery, and I know that the governor has come out against marijuana, so I would like to address the issues that he's trying to push a marijuana DUI bill, thanking you that he was acknowledging that he was a brewer. So in the real world, when you talk to people who have substance abuse issues, they don't care about whether it's marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, meth, heroin. They always start off with alcohol. And so I want to, just point out to people who is the real initial gateway alcohol drug pusher.
So on the first point, and I'll let maybe on the marijuana is not my thing in the legislature.
But outside of the legislature?
Still not outside the legislature.
Well, you're always welcome to join us at the round.
Thank you. And I think it's an important point. In this conversation that the governor wants to have, we need to make sure everyone's at the table and everyone has a voice. Because the saying is, those who show up are the ones who, make the rules and dictate what happens. And it's incumbent on us as leaders to make sure that when these meetings are happening, that it gets disseminated to everyone in our district, that people know that they should show up. We encourage people to show up, because one of the issues is you can get a skewed sample. You can get a sample of people who are more affluent, who have means, who can get the babysitter to take care of their kids, can show up, versus the person who's working a night shift, who can't be there. And so we need to make sure, and this is one of the things I'm going to have a conversation with the governor, is as you roll this out, how are you making sure that every person in Colorado has a chance to have that voice, even if they